Everybody knows that once a dictator gets into power, it's really difficult to get rid of them, but not many people truly understand why this is. In this video, I'm going to try to change that by explaining why, but first, you got to remember to subscribe to my channel. There are many pathways for any would-be dictator to get into power, but getting into power is one thing. To become a true dictator, a person has to be able to keep that power once they have it. That means what makes a dictator is not getting power, it's how they retain it. The way they do this in principle is in fact very simple. What they do is they try to set up their society in such a way that everyone becomes reliant on them in some shape or form, but at the same time, they try to ensure that they themselves never become reliant on any one person or persons. And this is really important, you see. What they do is they try to limit the number of options everyone in their society has to just them, while ensuring that they themselves have as many options as possible. By doing this, everyone becomes expendable to the dictator, but to everyone else, the dictator is not expendable. That means if a dictator manages to create a setup like this, he would find himself with a lot of people feeling a need to protect him, but he himself would never feel any need to protect any one individual or group of people. And no doubt you can see the immense benefits to a dictator of a setup like this. Basically, the dictator can get rid of anyone they want without any fear. That means to him, everyone is expendable, and all because to everyone else, he has made himself completely and entirely indispensable. Now, I know what you're thinking. How does a dictator go about creating this kind of setup? Well, there are many ways they can do it, but to give an example of one, and this is probably by far the simplest way to do it, it would be by aiming to gain control of the nation's food supply. For example, imagine there's a nation called Genghisland, and in this nation there are 10 farms. Let's imagine that a person called Genghis controls all of them. Inevitably, Genghis would be in a very powerful situation because he would control the nation's food supply, which would mean the entire nation would be completely and entirely relying on him for food. There's only one problem here for Genghis, and that is that the farmers themselves would wield a lot of power and so would be able to challenge him. That is, unless of course he does this one thing, and this one thing would be gaining control of the market, ensuring that the farmers had absolutely no control over the markets whatsoever. You see, the benefit to Genghis in doing this would be that he would make himself the sole conduit between the farmers and the markets, making both the farmers and the markets relying on him, but not on each other. And this is crazy important for any would-be dictator. What they have to do is keep everyone divided while ensuring that they are the only entity that can unite things. For example, by Genghis gaining control of both the farms and the markets and keeping them separate, the farmers can't sell their food without him, and the markets, and so the people can't buy food without him, making him indispensable to all. And this reality, a dictator making themselves a central conduit and ensuring people are kept apart from each other, is the key to any dictatorship. It's for this reason that dictators always go out of their way in their efforts to isolate people as much as possible. If people have the power to connect with each other, they can overthrow them. So the root of all the dictators' power is based in keeping people separate. They have to keep people separate. This is why communication and travel is much more difficult in dictatorships than anywhere else. If it wasn't, then it wouldn't be a dictatorship anymore, as the people would have connected with each other and overthrown it. This is why nations that have dictators tend to have citizens who are on many levels much more independent than those who live in free nations. The greater independence keeps the people out of reach from each other, allowing the dictator to keep their hold on them. Of course, the greater independence is born through an illusion, and that shouldn't be forgotten, but it doesn't change the fact that people who live in dictatorships tend to be more self-sufficient and so on many levels more independent than those in free nations, which I know sounds absolutely crazy, but it is actually true. And you can see this in how dictatorships are overthrown, which is always through people uniting together against them. That means, rather crazily, the best way for people to defeat a dictatorship is by fighting to become as connected to each other as possible and as dependent on each other as possible. It sounds like a total paradox, but it is absolutely the way to fight off dictators. And the reason why is that in a nation where everyone is connected to each other and where everyone is dependent on large numbers of people, no one person can ever get absolute power, because enough people will always be able to band together to stop them. That's all from me. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, remember to give it a like and subscribe to my channel, because the more who do so, the more of these I can make. Is that a good bribe? I hope it is. I'll see you next time.